The missing voices, the night sky above Mars was calm, the red planet glowing softly under the light of distant stars. Inside the orbital station, Captain Ilara Hayes stood alone by the viewing window. Watching the silent world below, her reflection stared back at her, eyes tired but sharp. She had seen many battles, but nothing prepared her for the message that had just arrived. The signal was weak, almost lost in the static of deep space. It was found by accident, hidden in an old transmission band no one used anymore. The technician who discovered it called her immediately, saying it sounded like a child's voice. At first, Ilara thought it was a mistake, but when she played the recording, the voice broke through the static and small, scared and unmistakably human. "Please help us, they took us far away. We can't see the sun anymore," the voice whispered. The room fell silent. Ilara froze, her heart pounding. Around her, the crew gathered, their faces pale. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the recording ended with a faint metallic sound, the echo of chains. The command room filled with whispers. A human child, speaking from beyond the solar system. No one had ever expected such a thing for decades. Humanity believed it had control over its colonies, trade routes, and outer worlds. But this single message changed everything. Ilara contacted Earth Command at once, her voice steady but cold. "We have received a distress signal, origin unknown. Voice confirms human child." The reply came after a long silence. "Captain Hayes, trace it and report. Do not engage until ordered." But Ilara could feel it already. This was not something she could ignore. As the Erebus 01 prepared for launch, her crew worked in silence. The engineers checked the reactors. The pilots plotted coordinates. No one complained. They had all heard the same recording, and no one could forget the fear in that child's voice. Outside the station, the fleet docks were dark except for the glowing blue engines of Erebus 01. The ship looked alive, its armor black as void, pulsing faintly with energy. The crew boarded quickly. Every step echoed with determination. When they left Mars orbit, the stars stretched into long trails as they jumped to FTL speed. The signal's location pointed toward the outer rim, a sector long abandoned after the last war. Rumors said the Velkar Dominion controlled that region now, a race known for cruelty and silence. As the journey continued, Ilara stood on the bridge looking at the stars. She remembered her own daughter back on Earth, only 10 years old, laughing as she built small paper rockets. The thought made her chest tighten. She whispered to herself, "No child should ever cry in the dark." Hours later, they arrived near the coordinates. What they found was not a planet, but the remains of one. The entire world had been mined to the core. The surface was gray, lifeless, full of metallic dust among the ruins. The sensors picked up faint energy, a small transmitter, buried under rock and debris. They sent a probe to recover it when it returned. The crew gathered around the projector. The device looked ancient, human-made but modified with alien parts. Ilara activated it, and the room filled again with voices. Not one child this time, but many, crying, whispering, calling for help. The crew stood frozen. The sound of chains rattling filled the air. A low hum of alien machines could be heard in the background. One of the voices said, "They call us Earthborn. They say we belong to them now." Another said, "Please, tell my mother I miss her." Ilara felt her hands tremble. She looked at her officers, each one filled with anger and sorrow. No one dared to speak. Then Ilara said quietly, "They took our children." The communication officer swallowed hard. "Captain, the logs show this signal has been repeating for more than 30 years. 30 years. Ilara repeated, almost whispering. That meant generations of humans had been stolen, hidden, and sold without anyone knowing. She turned toward the main console and sent a direct message to Earth Command. "We have confirmation of mass abduction of human children. Evidence of alien involvement." Her voice cracked slightly. "Request permission to pursue." Minutes passed. No answer came. The silence from Earth grew heavier with each second. The crew waited, but Ilara already knew what she would do. She looked around the bridge at her loyal officers. At the stars waiting outside, "Prepare the weapons. Set course for the outer rim. We're going after them," she said. No one argued. No one hesitated. Every human heart on that ship burned with the same thought: justice. As the engines roared to life, the Erebus 01 turned toward the darkness. The stars seemed to flare brighter, as if the universe itself felt what was coming. In the quiet before the jump, Alara whispered into the comm. Not to Earth, not to her command, but to the stars. Hold on. Children of Earth, she said softly. We're coming for you. And with that, the ship vanished into the endless black, leaving behind a single trail of blue fire. The first spark of Earth's retribution. The trail of chains, the deep space around the Erebus 01 was silent. Only the soft hum of the engines filled the bridge. Captain Alara Hayes stood near the tactical screen, watching the shifting lines of data. The signal had led them far beyond the edge of known space, toward a sector where no human ship had traveled in decades. The crew was restless yet focused, Lieutenant Miro. The ship's communication officer broke the silence. Captain, we intercepted fragments of alien transmissions, coded and layered, but I think they're linked to the same frequency as the children's signal. Alara nodded slowly. Decode them no matter how long it takes. Hours passed as the crew worked without rest. Every screen glowed with alien text and symbols, distorted by distance and encryption. Finally, Miro looked up, his voice trembling. Captain, it's a trade manifest. The room went silent. What kind of trade? Alara asked, though she already feared the answer. Miro swallowed hard. Slaves, Captain, they're selling humans. The words struck like thunder. Alara's eyes narrowed. Who are the buyers? She demanded. Miro expanded the file. Symbols appeared. The seal of the Velkar Dominion. The Velkar, a species infamous in dark rumors, known for cruelty and silence for centuries, they ruled the shadow markets of the galaxy, trading lives for power. But no one had ever dared to confirm it. Until now, Alara looked at her crew, their faces hard with disbelief and anger. We have proof now, she said. Earth will have no choice but to act. But before she could send the report, another message arrived, a live broadcast, distorted but clear enough. An alien face appeared, gray-skinned, eyes black like oil, sharp teeth flashing under the dim light. To the humans listening, the creature hissed. Your kind was weak enough to lose its children? They are ours now, property of the Dominion. Turn back before you join them. The transmission cut, leaving only static. The room remained silent for several seconds. Then the pilot muttered, Captain orders. Alara's expression hardened. We're not turning back, she said coldly. We're going to find where that message came from. The Erebus 01 shifted course, heading deeper into Dominion territory. The stars outside turned red from nebula light, and the sensors began to detect strange energy readings. Alien patrol ships drifted nearby, their shapes long and insect-like. The humans moved carefully, using stealth drives to mask their presence. The ship disguised its signal as a cargo freighter, hiding in the noise of the void. Inside, the crew prepared for infiltration. Lieutenant Rhea, the chief engineer, loaded plasma rifles while whispering, We're walking into hell, Captain. Alara nodded. Then let's make sure we don't come back empty-handed. They approached an asteroid field where the Dominion had built a mining outpost. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary facility. But their scanners revealed life forms. Thousands of them. Many human. Alara clenched her jaw. This is it, she said. They turned it into a slave station. The ship docked silently in a shadowed port. A small team of Marines followed Alara as she stepped into the cold metallic corridors. The air smelled like oil and decay. They moved quietly through the tunnels, hiding behind machinery when alien guards passed. In one room they saw cages stacked in rows, filled with weak, pale figures. When Alara moved closer, her heart stopped. Small human children, eyes wide, bones showing through thin skin. One of them looked up and whispered, Are you real? Alara knelt, her voice trembling. Yes, we're from Earth. You're safe now. The child began to cry softly, whispering, They said no one would come. Alara touched her shoulder gently. We came, she said, and we're not leaving without you. The team freed as many as they could, carrying the weakest back to the ship. When the alarms blared, alien guards swarmed the corridors, but it was too late. The Erebus 01 lifted off under heavy fire, returning laser bursts with precision. Explosions lit the asteroid's surface like fireworks. The mining outpost broke apart, debris scattering into space. The Dominion fleet nearby started to mobilize, but the humans were already gone, back on board. The medical bay was filled with rescued children, many too weak to speak. One of them held Alara's hand tightly. Refusing to let go, he whispered, There are more. On other worlds, Alara nodded, her eyes burning with emotion. Then we'll find them all, she said. Every last one. The bridge was quiet as the Erebus 01 jumped back to light speed. Behind them, the burning remains of the outpost drifted silently. When Ilara finally sent her report to Earth Command, she added a single line at the end, a message not for her superiors, but for humanity itself. They took our children, we found them, and we will not stop until every last chain is broken. Her words spread across every Terran channel, stirring the hearts of billions on every colony. People stopped to listen. Some cried, some clenched their fists, and some whispered the same vow, never again. Far across the galaxy, in the dark halls of the Velkar Dominion, their leaders watched the transmission with unease. For the first time in history, the slavers of the galaxy realized what they had awakened. Earth was coming and the stars would soon burn with vengeance. The first fire. The galaxy had grown used to ignoring humanity. For centuries, Earth had been quiet, rebuilding after wars, expanding slowly, trading peacefully. But that silence ended the moment the Dominion slave camps were exposed. Across every human colony, news spread like wildfire. The stolen children, the proof of slavery, the faces of the rescued. The reaction was the same everywhere, fury, pure and unstoppable. The Terran command assembled in orbit around Earth. 20 warships stood ready, each a monument of human engineering. Ships like Erebus 01, built for exploration but born for vengeance. Their black hulls shimmered like storms waiting to break. In the command chamber, Admiral Rowan addressed the fleet. His voice deep and steady. For 30 years they stole from us, they broke families. They treated our children like property. He paused, eyes hard. No more today. Humanity answers. Ilara Hayes stood on the Erebus 01 bridge, her crew silent as she listened to the broadcast. The order was short, but it carried the weight of an entire species. Operation Dawnfire is approved. Eliminate the Dominion outposts. The fleet moved, breaking through space like a storm. Their engines burned brighter than suns. Each jump brought them closer to enemy space. Meanwhile, in the Velkar Dominion, panic spread. The alien council gathered, their voices hissing through holographic displays. They're coming, one said. The humans. They destroyed the mining post, another growled. They are primitive. They cannot fight our fleets, but even as they spoke, their outer defenses began to vanish from sensors. The Erebus 01 arrived first, leading the vanguard. The target was a Dominion hub world, Calreth Prime. A city built on the bones of slaves orbiting the planet were 6 massive warships. Armed and waiting, contact, shouted Miro. They've locked weapons. Ilara's voice was calm. Target the largest one, focus all cannons. Fire. Blue plasma erupted from the Erebus 01. Cutting through space like lightning, the Dominion ship tried to shield itself. But the human weapons tore through its armor. The explosion lit up the void. A single shot, one ship gone. The rest of the alien fleet panicked. Their communications filled with static and fear. They had never faced human technology before, and what they saw now was beyond their understanding. From orbit, the human fleet descended. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward the surface, striking slave factories and military bases. The sky of Calreth Prime turned white with fire. In the cities below, alien overseers fled, terrified as their empire began to crumble. The humans made sure not to target civilians, only the Dominion's power centers. But the destruction was still overwhelming. The Velkar Emperor watched from his throne room as his defense networks went dark. Who are they? He whispered, his claws shaking. What kind of monsters burn stars for vengeance? On the Erebus 01, Ilara watched the chaos unfold. Her crew cheered as Dominion ships fell one by one, but her expression stayed cold. We're not here for glory, she said quietly. We're here for justice. Suddenly, the tactical officer called out. Captain, incoming fleet, 40 ships. They're surrounding us, Ilara nodded. Let them. The human fleet switched to coordinated formation. Dozens of Terran ships aligned perfectly, their weapons forming a shimmering network of light. The Dominion ships fired first, hundreds of plasma blasts tearing across the void. But the humans didn't flinch. The defensive AI known as Argus activated, deflecting and absorbing the first wave. Then came the reply. The Terran cannons fired in unison, beams of white-hot energy slicing through the dark. The space between the fleets became a burning ocean of light. Alien crews screamed across comms. They're not fighting. They're erasing us. The battle lasted only 12 minutes. When it ended, 40 Dominion warships were gone. The galaxy's communication networks lit up with footage of the destruction. Every species watched in shock. Some were horrified. Others whispered in awe for centuries. The galaxy had called humans reckless, emotional, weak. Now they saw something different. A predator that had been sleeping too long. After the battle, Ilara stood on the viewing deck, watching the flames of Calreth Prime fade into cold dust. The rescued children from the asteroid outpost watched too, their small hands pressed against the glass. One of them asked softly, "Did we win?" Ilara knelt beside him and said, "No, not yet. This was only the first fire back on Earth." The broadcast of the battle reached billions. People stood in silence as they watched alien fleets burn. Across colonies, humans began raising banners with a single phrase, "For the taken." In the Dominion capital, panic spread. Some rulers fled their palaces. Others prepared armies. The Emperor, furious and afraid, declared war on humanity. His final message to his generals was short: "Burn Earth before it burns us," but deep in his heart, even he knew the truth. The galaxy had awakened something it could not control, and somewhere beyond the stars the human fleet was already moving again, silent and unstoppable. The galaxy had lit the first fire, but Earth would turn it into an inferno. The broken empire. The war had spread faster than light itself. Within days, every corner of the galaxy knew what had happened on Calreth Prime. Entire fleets of the Velkar Dominion had been reduced to ashes, and the humans, the species once called fragile and reckless, had become the storm that tore through the stars. In the great council halls of neutral races, fear and confusion ruled the air. Some races whispered, "The humans have gone mad," while others said softly, "No, they have awakened." No one could agree, but everyone could feel the same thing. The galaxy was changing, and nothing would ever be the same again. On board the Erebus HFY, Captain Ilara Hayes stood before her crew as the holographic image of the Dominion's capital glowed before them. The image showed riots, burning towers, and ships fleeing into space. The once proud empire was collapsing from within. Lieutenant Rhea spoke quietly. "Captain, multiple slave worlds are rebelling. Alien slaves are rising too. They're following our signal transmissions. They're calling it the dawn of Earth's light." Ilara stared at the data for a long moment, then said, "Then let it burn, every chain, every cage, every market. Let them all burn." In the Dominion's central palace, Emperor Valkor watched his empire fall apart. His advisors shouted, blaming one another. "The humans have hacked our communication grids," one yelled. "They're exposing our secrets to the entire galaxy," another screamed. Valkor slammed his claws against the floor, his voice shaking with rage. "Then silence them, destroy their ships. Do anything," but it was too late. The humans had already unleashed a weapon far deadlier than any gun. Truth. Across the galactic network, the Terran broadcast appeared. Every screen, every terminal, every communication relay showed the same footage. Recordings from the slave camps. Images of human children locked in cages. Alien guards laughing as they worked them to exhaustion. The galaxy fell silent. Civilizations that once traded with the Dominion turned away in disgust. Armies refused to follow orders. Merchants shut their ports. And the Velkar economy collapsed overnight. On the Erebus HFY, the crew watched the chaos unfold. Miro whispered, "They can't hide anymore." Ilara nodded. "No one can." But even as justice spread, revenge burned hotter. The Dominion still held one last stronghold, the fortress world of Neuraxis, where the largest concentration of enslaved humans was rumored to be kept. Admiral Rowan contacted Ilara via hololink, his face grim. "Captain, the Council of Earth has voted. The Dominion is to be dismantled completely. You are authorized to take the fleet to Neuraxis." Ilara's eyes hardened. "Understood, Admiral," she said. "We will finish this." The fleet gathered, 200 warships, the largest Terran formation ever seen. Every ship carried messages from Earth's people, simple words written across their hulls, for the lost, for the taken, for the children. As they jumped into hyperspace, the stars stretched into bright white lines on the bridge. Silence filled the room. Everyone knew what was coming. The Dominion still had power, and the fortress world was said to be surrounded by energy shields powered by captured suns. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found it waiting. A massive ring of defense platforms surrounded Neuraxis, glowing red with plasma energy. Thousands of enemy ships filled the void. The Emperor himself was there, commanding his final army. Alara stared at the sight. "So this is where it ends," she said softly. The tactical officer looked nervous. "Captain, they outnumber us 10-1, Alara replied calmly. "Good. Then they won't miss the message." The first shots came from the Dominion. Thousands of plasma bolts tore through space, lighting the blackness with green fire. The human fleet responded instantly. Coordinated volleys struck back with precision, tearing open the enemy lines. The battle turned the void into chaos. Explosions flared everywhere. Debris scattered like burning stars. But the humans didn't stop. They pushed forward, closer and closer to the planet. In the middle of the fight, Erebus 01 took heavy fire, alarms blaring through the ship. "Shields failing," Rhea shouted. "Hull damage on deck 7. Alara gripped the railing. Reroute power to the forward cannons were breaking through. With a final burst of energy, the Erebus 01 cut a path through the enemy blockade. Human ships poured in behind her, focusing all weapons on the planetary shields. The surface defenses screamed under the pressure, and then the shields cracked. A blinding flash filled the space around Neuraxis. The barrier shattered like glass. Humanity's fleet roared forward. The Dominion fleet tried to retreat, but the humans didn't let them, not this time. Not after decades of silence and pain on the ground. Dominion soldiers fled as explosions tore through their strongholds. In the deepest pits of the planet, slaves looked up and saw the sky open for the first time in years. The clouds burned with blue light as human dropships descended. Alara led the landing herself, armored in black steel. When she stepped onto the scorched soil of Neuraxis, the wind carried the echoes of victory and sorrow. She raised her rifle and said into her comm, "The Empire is broken, start the liberation." For hours, the sound of freedom echoed, chains breaking, doors falling, people screaming with joy. By the time the sun rose over the ruins, the Velkar Dominion no longer existed. In the council worlds far away, the galaxy watched in silence. Some feared, some wept, but all understood. The humans had done the impossible. They had destroyed an empire, not for conquest, but for justice, and somewhere in the shadows, survivors of the Dominion whispered a single phrase that would haunt generations to come. "When Earth burns, the stars weep, the children's planet, the war was over." But the silence that followed felt heavier than battle. Across the galaxy, the fires of the Velkar Dominion burned out, their fleets destroyed, their cities in ruins. Yet even with victory shining across every Terran screen, Captain Alara Hayes could not rest. There was one unanswered signal, one ghost left in the dark. It came from deep within the former Dominion's core systems, a small uncharted world hidden behind collapsing wormhole routes. The coordinates had been recovered from the Emperor's personal archive. A file marked simply, Project Nursery. Alara stared at the name on her console, her heart tightening. "Nursery," she whispered. "They didn't mean care." "Did they?" Lieutenant Miro looked pale. "No, Captain. They meant control." The Erebus 01 jumped through the shattered wormhole field, drifting past wrecked satellites and frozen debris. The scanners picked up faint human life signs from the surface. The planet was small, gray, and lifeless, surrounded by a thin ring of dust and shattered ships. When the ship descended through the clouds, the crew saw it. Endless rows of metallic buildings stretching across deserts of ash, each building identical. Square, sterile, and silent, no movement, no life, just the faint pulse of weak energy beneath the surface. Alara ordered a landing near the central structure. The ground was cold and cracked, the air thin. The Marines moved ahead, scanning the area. "Radiation levels low," Rhea said. "But I'm detecting power signatures underground." They forced open the main hatch. A thick metal door covered in alien symbols. Inside was darkness. Only when the ship's drones floated in and turned on their lights did the horror unfold. Hundreds of glass chambers lined the walls, each one holding a small human child suspended in stasis. Pale and motionless, their tiny faces peaceful, unaware of the nightmare around them. On the floor beside each pod were alien devices connected to their brains, labeled in Velkar script. Miro's voice broke as he translated cognitive conditioning, emotional suppression. They were trying to erase them, make them forget who they are. Alara's eyes filled with tears, her voice shaking. They were turning them into something else. She pressed her hand against one of the glass pods. A young girl inside stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open for the first time in decades. A human child looked up at a fellow human, Her lips moved weakly. "Are you real?" Ilara nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, little one. You're safe now." As the rescue team spread across the facility, they found more chambers, more children, thousands of them. Some were too weak to wake. Others cried softly when they saw the rescuers. The medics worked without rest, carrying each child carefully to the dropships. But in one corner of the underground vault, the team found something different. A chamber larger than the rest. Inside, instead of a single child, there were two, a boy and a girl. Their vitals were stronger, their DNA readings strange, not fully human. Ria's voice trembled. "Captain, these two have been altered." Ilara frowned. "Altered how?" "Their genetic code is mixed with Velkar sequences, hybridized," Ria replied. "The Dominion was experimenting with them." Ilara knelt beside the pods, staring at the sleeping children. The boy's pulse was steady, but his neural pattern glowed with strange energy. "They were building something new," she said softly. "A weapon, maybe. Or a message." When they activated the control console, a final log appeared, a holographic recording of the late Emperor. His image flickered, his voice distorted but clear. "The human mind, pure, adaptable, unbreakable. We could not destroy it, so we tried to rewrite it. The hybrids will be our legacy, beings who remember nothing of Earth but carry our strength." Ilara shut the console down, her jaw tight. "Not your legacy," she said coldly. "Ours." The Erebus 01 launched evacuation pods for hours, filling its cargo holds with sleeping children. The rescued hybrids were placed under watch, their vitals monitored constantly. But as the ship lifted off, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that the Emperor's words hid another truth. On the bridge, Miro looked up from his screen. "Captain, I found something in the hybrid's genetic code. It's not just alien data. It's a map." Ilara frowned. "A map to what?" Miro zoomed in on the digital structure, the code arranged like a spiral star pattern. "These are coordinates deeper in the galactic core. Beyond Dominion territory," he said. "It might be where the other captives were taken." Ilara turned toward the window, watching the planet fade behind them. Thousands of freed children now slept safely aboard her ship, their small dreams echoing across the quiet halls. "Then we're not done," she said quietly. "Not until every one of them is home, back on Earth." The footage of the children's planet reached billions. People wept openly as they saw the truth. The galaxy trembled once again, but this time, it was not from war, it was from shame. Ilara's name became a symbol, whispered across every world. The captain who found the lost, yet even in celebration, her heart remained heavy. She knew the war had taken much, but what they had found on that lonely world was more than tragedy. It was a warning. As the stars stretched into long streams once more, the Erebus 01 vanished into hyperspace, its engines burning bright blue, and somewhere beyond the known stars, a faint signal pulsed almost like a heartbeat, waiting for someone to follow. The burning of stars, the galaxy had gone quiet. The Dominion was gone, its armies shattered, its slave worlds freed, yet the silence did not bring peace. It was the silence that comes before another storm, a storm that would decide the fate of every living being in the stars. Aboard the Erebus 01, Captain Ilara Hayes stood before the central holomap, staring at a set of new coordinates glowing in red. They came from the DNA of the hybrid children rescued from the nursery planet. The pattern wasn't random. It pointed to something deep within the galactic core, a place no ship had ever returned from. Lieutenant Miro spoke quietly. "Captain, we've run the data 3 times. The coordinates lead to a Dyson system, something massive, possibly artificial." Ilara nodded slowly, her voice calm but heavy. "Then that's where the truth lies, and that's where we end this." The Terran fleet prepared for one last mission. Every ship loaded supplies, every pilot checked their systems. Every soldier knew what this meant, the final battle. The operation was codenamed Starlight's End. When the fleet jumped, the stars blurred into white rivers. For hours, space stretched endlessly, until at last, they emerged into darkness unlike anything they had ever seen. The Dyson system loomed ahead, a star surrounded by an enormous metallic shell. Fragments of shattered stations and dead ships floating like ghosts. The entire place pulsed with weak energy, as if something ancient still lived beneath the ruins. "Scanning for life," Ria said, her fingers flying over the console. The sensors flickered, showing faint signals. There are humans down there, Captain, but they're not moving. Ilara's heart tightened. Bring us in. As they descended, the ship's lights cut through the endless fog, revealing gigantic structures, towers, domes, and long tunnels carved into the metal world. It looked like a planet made of machines. When the Erebus 01 landed, the Marines moved out. The air was still, cold, and thick with dust. Deep inside the facility, they found rows of strange machines connected to pods, and inside those pods were more humans, adults and children, preserved, unmoving. Their bodies intact, but their minds gone. Miro whispered, "It's a vault, Captain." They weren't killing them, they were storing them. Ilara clenched her fists. Why? A voice answered from the shadows, deep and echoing. Because we needed them. The soldiers raised their weapons. From the darkness emerged a tall figure wrapped in armor made of living metal. His eyes glowed faint blue. His face a perfect mix of human and alien features. Rhea whispered in shock. "Captain, that's one of the hybrids." The figure nodded, his voice calm but powerful. "I am what they created, what you destroyed. My name is Kale. I was born here, from human strength and Velkar design." Ilara stepped forward, her tone steady. "Why are you here? What is this place?" Kyle looked toward the glowing star beyond the metallic walls. This was the Emperor's final vision. He wanted to create a new race, humans without mercy, without emotion, designed to survive any world, to rebuild the Dominion even after its fall. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Miro whispered, "Captain, he's saying there are more of them." Kale nodded. "Thousands asleep, waiting for a signal that will awaken them." Ilara took a step closer. "And will you wake them?" Kyle's eyes flickered with something almost human. "I was told to, but I have seen what the Dominion truly was. I watched them break your kind, and I learned what it means to be human. It means to feel, to fight for others, not to enslave them." Rhea lowered her weapon slightly. "Then help us end this." Kale turned toward a console in the center of the room. "There's one last system still active. If it's not destroyed, the hybrids will awaken and spread. Stronger and faster than humans or Velkar combined." Ilara nodded firmly. "Then we destroy it," but before she could move, alarms began to scream. The metallic floor shook violently. "Captain," Miro shouted, "energy surge!" The system's self-defense has activated. Massive drones rose from the ground, each one the size of a shuttle, glowing red with ancient power. The humans opened fire, blue plasma lighting the hall, the air filled with noise and smoke. The Erebus 01 itself shook as the entire structure began to collapse. Kale fought beside them, his metallic body shrugging off blasts. "You must reach the core," he shouted. "It's the only way to stop the awakening." Ilara led the charge through collapsing tunnels, past falling debris and fire until they reached a chamber of pure light. At its center floated a glowing sphere, the heart of the Dyson world. "Destroy it," she ordered. Rhea connected the ship's reactor core to overload. 30 seconds, she said, her voice trembling. Kale stood by the sphere, his body flickering. "Captain, you must go. I will hold the system." Ilara shook her head. "You'll die." Kyle smiled faintly. "So will the monsters who made me." Before she could stop him, Kyle reached into the sphere, light engulfing his body. The entire world began to tremble, explosions tearing through the structure. Ilara ran back toward the ship, her crew close behind as they lifted off. The Dyson world began to implode. The star inside burned brighter, brighter than ever before, until the entire sky turned white from orbit. The fleet watched the explosion consume the system. The light spread across the void, brighter than any sun, Miro whispered. "It's beautiful." Ilara closed her eyes. "It's justice." When the light faded, nothing remained of the Dominion's last secret. The hybrids were gone, the vault destroyed. The galaxy's dark history burned away in the fire of a dying star. On the ship's deck, Ilara stood in silence, the reflection of the explosion still shining in her eyes. She whispered softly, "He was born of our pain. But he chose to end it. That's what it means to be human." Behind her, the crew stood quietly. The war was finally over. But none of them felt victory, only peace, and the weight of everything they had seen. As the fleet turned toward home, the dying light of the Dyson system faded behind them. The stars seemed to shimmer in silence, as if the galaxy itself bowed its head. That night, from the ashes of war, humanity learned something eternal, even in the cold of space. Compassion burns brighter than vengeance. The light returns. The war had ended. The stars that once burned with fire now shimmered quietly. The Velkar Dominion was no more. Its fleet scattered, its world silent. Its shadow no longer haunted the galaxy. What remained was a universe forever changed by the wrath and mercy of humankind. Captain Alara Hayes stood aboard the Erebus 1, gazing through the wide observation window. Beyond the ship stretched the glow of distant nebulae, peaceful and endless for the first time in years. She could look at the stars without seeing battlefields. The fleet was returning home. Dozens of Terran warships drifted alongside them, their hulls scorched and battered but alive. Every ship carried survivors, freed humans, rescued children, and alien refugees who had chosen to stand beside Earth. Alara watched as one of the hybrid children, the small girl from the nursery, pressed her hand against the glass. Staring at the stars, her voice was soft. "They're beautiful." Alara smiled faintly. "They always were, we just forgot to look." Back on Earth, celebrations erupted across every city. Crowds filled the streets, lights covered the skies. From the megastructures on Luna to the domes of Mars, billions watched the fleet's return. At the heart of the United Earth Council, a single phrase echoed through every broadcast: "The children have come home." As the ships entered orbit, a global transmission went live, showing the Terran fleet against the blue curve of Earth. The narrator's voice was filled with awe. The warriors of humanity returned not as conquerors, but as guardians of all life. In the council hall, Admiral Rowan addressed the gathered leaders of hundreds of worlds. His words were steady and clear. "The age of silence is over. Humanity will not rule through fear, but through protection, through unity, through the promise that no child, human or alien, will ever be enslaved again." The galaxy listened, and for the first time in centuries, they believed. The freed civilizations of the Outer Rim signed the Human Accord, a new law that banned slavery, genetic exploitation, and forced labor across every known system. The symbol of the accord was simple: a child's hand reaching toward a star. Weeks later, the Erebus 1 descended over the Atlantic spaceport. A sea of people waited, waving flags, cheering and crying. When Alara stepped onto the platform, the sound was overwhelming. She wasn't a soldier anymore. She was something else. A reminder of what humanity could become when it remembered who it truly was. Reporters surrounded her, asking endless questions. But she only said one thing: "This victory isn't mine. It belongs to every parent who waited, every child who hoped, and every heart that refused to forget." The hybrid children were brought before the council scientists for care and protection. Some would later grow up to become ambassadors between species, symbols of the bridge that had been built from pain to peace. But for Alara, the war had left quiet scars. At night, she often stood by the ocean, watching the stars reflected in the waves, remembering the names of those who never came home. One evening, as the wind carried the sound of laughter from the nearby celebrations, a small hand tugged at her coat. It was the little girl from the nursery. She looked up at Alara and smiled. "You kept your promise." Alara knelt and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "We all did," she said softly. Together, far beyond Earth, the galaxy healed slowly. The ruins of Dominion space were transformed into free colonies, shared by humans and aliens alike. Once feared systems became centers of learning and trade. The words Deathworlders and Terran Rage became part of history lessons. Not warnings, humanity was now known not for destruction, but for defiance in the face of cruelty, for standing up when others looked away. Years later, a memorial was built on Mars, a black monolith engraved with thousands of names: soldiers, civilians, children, and even allies who had fallen. At its center, a glowing inscription read, "When the galaxy enslaved our children, Earth set the stars on fire, and from the ashes, we built a brighter light." Alara visited it one last time before retirement. Her reflection glimmered in the polished surface as she whispered, "You're safe now." Behind her, young cadets saluted, inspired by the legends they grew up hearing. The stories of the Erebus 1, the fearless captain, and the burning of stars. As she walked toward her shuttle, she looked one last time at the night sky. The stars shimmered softly, like tiny fires, reminders of the past and promises for the future. And somewhere, carried by radio waves and memory, her final transmission still echoed through the galaxy. "To every world that watched us burn, To every child who waited in the dark, know this. Humanity is not vengeance. Humanity is the light that returns. The message spread across systems, bouncing from one end of the galaxy to another, heard by millions, remembered by billions, and as the Erebus 01 sailed into the horizon one last time, the universe seemed to whisper her words back. The light returns,